So what we saw from the 13, 14, and 1500s especially onwards was a proliferation and a development of the ketubah as an art form. And the geographic reach literally was from Afghanistan to Yugoslavia, from Azerbaijan to Yemen. It was found throughout the Jewish world, although interestingly enough, according to my research, less so in Eastern Europe and Central Europe. And we'll come back to that a little bit later. I'm going to show you a few examples of some of the early handmade ketubot. This one is from the Netherlands in 1661. I'm not sure how well you're able to see the image here. It's a monochromatic image. And interestingly enough, in the two top corners, there are images of people. As you may know, traditionally, Judaism, there is a concern about graven images, but throughout the centuries in different communities, some did not include human forms at all, others absolutely did. This next one is from Malta in 1807. You also can see at the top, there is a little image of Moshe Rabbeinu and the Ten Commandments. And this is an example of an arch form that is fairly common in the earlier ketubot, but we're still not seeing anything in terms of very vibrant color. Now, partly this one may have faded over time, but as far as we can tell, the colors are still fairly muted. Now, with this one, we're starting to get a sense of a little bit more vibrancy of color, and this is a design from Afghanistan from 1812. When you look at it, there is a sense of a Middle Eastern sort of a carpet, and it's a very good example of ketubah designs being influenced very much by the preferences, the tastes of the non-Jewish communities in which Jewish communities lived over time. Here's an interesting one. This is from Cochin, India, from 1790. And in this one, you can see that there are different sections. This appears in some ketubahs, but not all. And the different sections are sometimes used for different purposes. A very common one is to have the ketubah text in one of the areas and the t'naim to be in a second area. As you may know, the t'naim is something separate from the ketubah that these days at a traditional wedding is signed on the same day, but up until a while back it used to be the t'naim would be signed a year in advance or more. It was basically a betrothal. And the reason why that tradition was changed so they're signed on the same day is that the betrothal agreement was taken very seriously. In fact, if the engagement was broken off, a get would be required to break it off. So in order to minimize the likelihood of something happening between the t'naim being signed and the ketubah being signed, the rabbis decided to make them happen on the same day. And if you've ever been to a traditional wedding, the t'naim often involves the mothers breaking a plate. So it's sort of a colorful part of the ceremony. Now, we talked about handmade ketubahs. We're going to now start to look at pre-printed ketubahs, which have emerged in various communities. This one is from Yugoslavia from 1934. And instead of having the entire design and the script done by hand, what we see here is a very basic design that's pre-printed, and the text is pre-printed as well, and the rabbi typically would fill in the information. I'm not sure if you can see from where you're seated, but it's a very basic hand. There's no pretension at calligraphy. The names are just filled in. This one is from Eretz Yisrael, from 1881. And what's unique about this one is the border design was pre-printed, but the text is written by hand. So it's a bit of a combination of pre-printed with handwork. Here's one from Des Moines, Iowa, which happens to be where my grandmother grew up. No connection to this particular ketubah, from 1918. And this one has, again, an illustration at the top of a traditional wedding ceremony. So again, we're seeing the human form being included. And also it's filled in by hand with no pretension at calligraphy when it comes to filling in the names. Another one from the United States, this time from LA and quite a bit more recent. It's from 1949. It appears to have been part of some sort of a booklet. And what we're seeing here is the first instance that I found of a printed ketubah that was very vibrantly colored and even had been printed with some reflective gold. I don't think it was gold leaf. It looks like it was mass-produced with some sort of a gold foil. Now that we've covered the ancient history, if you will, up until the middle of the 20th century, we're going to start to look at what happened between the middle and late 20th century. And I think, as you'll see, it's a very significant period in the development of the ketubah as an art form.